how we saved a company hundreds of thousands of dollars by building them a very extensive custom solution. Let me tell you who they are. So a company called Yellowstone Landscaping. They're based out of Dunedin, Florida, which is near Ormond Beach area, which is northeast. What happens is that they came to us with this problem where they have a bunch of trucks, a fleet of trucks. They have 24 locations all across the United States. When those trucks would go out to service all the different landscaping projects that they had, they would go out and do their service, and they would come back to home base, and then the managers would have to spend hours trying to calculate all of the handwritten in and out times that they were at each location, plus how long the trucks were out there. Plus they have to do calculating gas mileage because each person was paid on a per mile basis as well, added on top of their normal salary or their normal pay, and all of this stuff. So the manager had to spend a lot of time actually putting all this together. They would do that, and then they would have to have them sign the document. And when they signed the document, sometimes the employees would come back and say, hey, I didn't get paid for a certain amount of time and all this. So there was just a lot of points of failure throughout that process. What they did is they came to us with this request. They wanted us to build something that would automate that process. My team and I, we got together, we built this solution, which is one of the best solutions I think we've ever built. The first thing we did is we had to, first of all, aggregate some type of GPS data from these trucks. And they were using a company called SkyEye GPS. And SkyEye GPS automatically had all of these devices inside those trucks. And the devices would communicate back up to the backend system. Their backend platform, they would put in all the geofences of every one of their customers. And the trucks that were assigned to those geofences would go into those geofences and come out. And the only data point that they would get is a timestamp with a 1 or a 0. Basically saying that they were in the location or they were outside the location. That was the biggest issue there. Once we knew that we had the GPS data information, the next thing was to build a backend system, an internal backend system that would aggregate that information. Every time a truck goes through GPS, we're able to aggregate all that information throughout the day. Therefore, as the trucks are out doing their thing, the backend system is gathering the information of what's happening throughout the day for every single truck across all the different locations across the United States. Now, we were able to do this. However, we still had to write the algorithm to turn a basic in point and out point for every truck inside of geofence and turn it into an actual timesheet where we can figure out every time they went into a geofence and they went out of a geofence, went back into a different geofence and out into another geofence. In the middle of all that, we had to calculate how much time they spent at lunchtime. But we also had to calculate how many miles as well. Obviously, using Google Maps, we were able to put together this algorithm that allowed us to be able to capture all this information. Plus, we had to develop the sorting algorithm that sorted all this data. Now, that's getting a little into the weeds to the technology, but just to give you an idea of how complex this was. At the end of the day, now we have all the trucks' information every time they went in, every time they went out of the geofences. Now, the next thing we had to do is we had to also add to the platform the ability to add employees to trucks, right? Because we had to make that relationship, right? And then trucks to location, because they had 24 locations across the US. That means every branch had their own backend admin where they can log in and see all the trucks in their location and all the employees that work on all those trucks. Plus, they had drivers that got different pay than the people that were just riding along in the trucks. We had to also have data for that accounted for. At the end of the day, we built out this backend system that allowed them to manage all their trucks, their personnel, and all of their lunch hours, all that kind of stuff. Then we had this algorithm that we built that aggregated all the data from the GPS information and be able to sort everything appropriately into a timesheet format. The kicker, the biggest thing, and I think was the best part of this whole project, was now the question is when the truck gets back to home base, instead of the manager having to log into our system, create the timesheets digitally, and then print them out, which would already have saved them a lot of time, we came up with this concept of when the truck gets back into the geofence location of home base, we trigger the printers to print out the timesheets already. When the personnel walk into the actual business, all they have to do is sign the documents, review and sign the documents. And then obviously the manager could go in and make any modifications if there's any changes. But for the most part, everything worked pretty flawlessly where they barely had to make any changes. And the employee would just walk in and sign their timesheet and walk out. And there was no work required on the manager. How did we perform this? What we did is we contacted HP, Hewlett-Packard, which had all the printers. The company was using all Hewlett-Packard printers. We contacted HP because there's a way that you can create virtual printers online using their platform that'll send data to the printers down at whatever facility. What we did is we created a middleware that when the trigger was when the truck got into the GPS of the home base, we would send a trigger to a Lambda function on Amazon Web Services that captured the trigger point, plus also captured in the subject line the number of the actual truck, the GPS identifier that was tied to a specific truck. And then we use that information to hit the backend system in order to verify which location that truck came from. Once we were able to gather that in the code, we then wrote out the trigger to go ahead and print out or create the timesheet into a PDF format. And then with the help of HP and an API that they provided for us, we were able to hit the HP API and tell it, okay, this specific location has this specific printer. We need to send this PDF to this specific printer and sent the print job. When we did that connection, we tested it the first time and it worked flawlessly. HP did a great job helping us out, their support people, and we had a list of every printer and all we had was the printer identifier, the printer number, right? But because we knew the location and the HP system knew the location tied to the printer, all we had to do was send it the information and tell it which location it needed to send the print to. And then it worked flawlessly. And again, like I said, it was something that, we initially were just trying to solve one little problem. And then we saw several areas after that we could solve more and more problems. And that's how we work. That's how we do our job here at Grata Software. We're an innovation company. We work with small businesses and we try to innovate new ways of saving money, making things more efficient. Anyways, there's a story.